Just checking the live stream on my side.
Looks like we're up.
Great. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us on our first live session around the Microsoft Excel World Championship qualifying round. We've got I've got Jason and Diarmuid or Dim with me, as well as Andrew. You'll see Andrew is quite a familiar face in the financial modeling space as well. So I think as an introduction, just want to start with who we are, and thank you for joining us. And maybe Andrew, if you could maybe just tell us 1 minute about yourself, who you are, and how are you involved?
Well, yeah. So hello everyone. My name is Andrew Grigolyunovich. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Financial Modeling World Cup. That's the organizers of the Microsoft Excel World Championship. And I'm actually the person who has created the case for the qualification round. Actually, 2 cases. So there were 2 sessions, and each session got their own version of the model, so different problems. And that was also the reason why we got the regional qualification round. So basically, people in Asia who are competing first don't get to compete to people in America who are competing later and who might occasionally get some cases leaked if we do that on the same on the same case. Yeah, and the tournament, the Microsoft Excel World Championship, that's basically the main the biggest tournament of the year in the Excel esports format. So that was only the first round, only the qualification before the main tournament starts, before the top 128 players start to battling each other and eliminating every round. There will be half of the players eliminated up until we get to the 8 top guns in the final session, who will decide who's going to win this year's top prize.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think it's a very exciting competition this year. I heard from Max that there's five times more players this year than last year. So the competitions is really getting quite stiff, and then we've already got some really good players who haven't made it to the top 128. I saw Stevenson Yu actually commenting saying he didn't make it, and last year he actually did really well. So maybe Dim, you tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Diarmuid, originally Irish, now living in New York City. I have been a competitive Excel modeler for 10 years now. Oh, almost 10 years. I started the second year of Model Off in 2013, and I've been hanging around doing these things ever since. And I have the distinction of making it to the 3rd round of this competition last year, so hoping to improve on that this time around.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and happy to have you here with us from New York. Andrew, where are you joining us from?
I'm based in Riga, Latvia. That's European Union, so the upper north here in Europe.
So I think it's almost late afternoon on your side.
I think we're on the same time zone with Jason and with you. So yeah, I would say maybe 1 hour difference.
Yeah, and myself and Jason are joining you from South Africa, live from South Africa. So it's afternoon for us, but still morning for Diarmuid. Jason, you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Renier. Yeah, Jason Weber. I'm a project finance specialist, I guess, working at FMWC in Johannesburg in South Africa. I've been in the sort of project finance space for going on 6 years now, I think. And always been a bit of an Excel geek, I'd say. Thanks in part to Renier himself. I think my sort of journey in the sort of competitive modeling / Excel space, the interest sort of sparked in sort of 2018, 2019 when I was a junior analyst associate at PwC doing a bit of financial modeling in my project finance role. And guys told me there was this thing called Model Off, and I didn't appreciate that there was something like competitive financial modeling, and was quite interested and tried some of the example cases that were available. In 2019, I sort of followed the competition. I think it was 2019, and was quite keen to participate in 2020. And then the Model Off competition obviously sort of went on hold. I can't remember if that was 2018 or 2019. And I was quite bummed actually. And then thankfully Andrew's team took up the challenge of setting up the FMWC and made it a more regular competition. And I signed up immediately. I was anticipating Model Off coming through anyway. So jumped into FMWC. I think I was quite fortunate initially to be one of the few people in Africa to participate. I think there were only 4 people in 2020, so I got a little bit of publicity from that, which was quite helpful. As is very evident this year, I'm clearly not the top modeler in Africa, which is it's great to see more guys coming through. But yeah, love for Excel and modeling really peaking at the moment. Yeah, thanks.
And then from my side, I'm a chartered accountant, very much a technologist, a big tech junkie, big Excel junkie as well. And I've actually spiraled off into more of a business and data analysis type of role and automation. So work very much in the tech space, but I've always had a big love for Excel, and I've always been punting Excel and telling everyone about Excel. And I really have a passion for teaching people more about Excel, because I think most users don't even know 10 or 20% of its features. So yeah, on my side, the reason why we decided to have this session today is because we are all passionate about this competition, about Excel, and very fortunate to actually have become friends and become good mates because of the competition as well. Jason and I have known each other for quite some time, because we were both at PwC at a stage, and it's just fun talking about these things and seeing how we have different approaches to things. So I think in the interest of time, maybe we can just talk about what the Microsoft Excel World Cup is. I think Andrew has alluded to it a little bit, but I think as soon as you see the cases, you'll understand what it's all about. And maybe I can ask you, Andrew, if you were in an elevator and you had to do an elevator pitch for the MEWC, what would you explain it to be?
Okay, what ability to be typically using stairs, or be located on the first floor. But overall, Microsoft Excel World Championship, it's the main tournament of Excel esports, and this is where 2 or sometimes 4 players face each other, solving fictitious problem in Excel, solving some cases that require basically intellect, analytical skills, and knowledge of Excel functions to get to the right answers. And these answers, these questions, they are progressing from easier, so that the players get used to the setup and get some early points, up to very complex questions where it's really not possible to, or sometimes next to impossible to solve in the 30-minute time format. So we're really trying to, with the Excel esports format, we're trying to make Excel and financial modeling to be very spectator friendly, so that people can see and learn from the best, and we can also highlight the top players in the world, the top specialists in the world, like you 3 guys are, to the bigger audience, and to see what miracles is it possible to make in Excel. So, and as you know, in August, like last year, the tournament has premiered on ESPN app, ESPN3, and this year the All-Star game was shown on the ESPN2. So basically, that was really broadcast on the main sports channel. So that's That's probably more than elevator speech. I'm probably somewhere around 100 or 200 floor right now. So back to you guys.
And I think what's interesting about this competition is the fact that it's a playoff from the next round. So you are actually faced with another player with a single person, and you need to defeat that person. So I actually made it to, I think, 15th place last year. So I was actually in the money last year, and it was just because I just edged out the opponent every time. But then I met with Andrew and Guy in the top 16, and he annihilated me. So he knocked me out.
It's what he does to all of us.
So yeah, Andrew actually won last year with the I think it was called the FMWC Open last year, and now this year it's the Microsoft Excel World Championship. Jason actually had a very good first round. I think you for the qualifying round you were 8th, so well done on that. And then if it wasn't for that one error that you made where you transferred the wrong number into the answer, you would have been the top ranked player with time, especially because you finished everything in 25 minutes.
Yep. It's I think I said to you earlier, you got to be like you got to be smart to be this dumb. I managed to work out all the answers right and then put one of them in wrong. Oops.
like I told you, it's just good to see that you're human as well. So yeah, maybe we can get into the cases. Jason, you wanna intro us into the cases, perhaps?
Yeah, sure.
Are you ready to share your screen, perhaps?
I'll just chat through conceptually what it's about, and then I think Renier, if you want to jump into question 1, we can do that. So I think important distinction that Andrew made earlier is that there was a set of questions for the Asia Pacific region and a set of questions for the rest of the world, just to manage time zones. So we'll be focusing today on the rest of the world questions, because that's where Renier, myself, and Dim sit. So I think if you participated, Andrew, if I'm not mistaken, you've got access to the questions that were in the other region as well, at least the solutions. And I'm sure that there will be other people that can post about their experience on the Asia Pacific side of things. So we'll be focusing on the rest of the world section today, and because those are the questions we answered, and I guess where we can give the insights. I think, as Renier was saying, we're going to sort of talk through our approaches as opposed to just trying to blast through the answers as Dim's so good at doing. I guess that brings Renier and myself into the playing field a bit, so we can just try to keep up. I think sort of 2 key things that stood out for me, sort of just conceptually on the qualification round this weekend, was one, the question in terms of difficulty and order of the questions was not sort of from easiest to hardest, right, in terms of the way they were set out. So question, I think 3 or 4 and 5 or whatever were the easy questions. 1 was a medium question and 2 was actually really hard, something like that. So I think that's an important point to note for guys that are participating going forward, is that you don't have to answer things in order, and if you get stuck, you can definitely jump down. And I just personally skipped question 2 to start with, and did 3 and 4 and 5, and then went back to 2. I mean, I was lucky enough to finish the entire case before the time was up, but that's a rare occurrence for me personally. I typically don't finish everything in every competition, so it's just about accumulating points, right? And I think the point that Renier said is, when in the next round, from the round of 128 going forward, you're up against one person, right? So you got to just knock that person out, and I think that brings a bit of excitement to it, because you just got to score better than one person. It's not just chopping the top half of the field every time, which I think is a great element to the competition. And the second point I'll just intro before Renier goes is, to take a bit of a stab at Dim. In these earlier rounds, time is less of an issue. You see, I ranked higher than Dim, although he's clearly about half an hour better than I am in a 60-minute competition. But it's just because of one misclick on Dim. So I saw quite a few people in the results today who scored, I don't know, missed 1,000 points, but they finished at sort of 47 minutes. And I sort of wonder if they just, tried to just spend the other 13 minutes unpacking something that they couldn't understand and just trying it out. I wonder what's going through the mind. So, my suggestion to the guys who are not at the top of their game, like Andrew, Nye, and Dim, and all those real sort of guys that stand out. Use up the time that you've got and just try and accumulate points. Don't give up. That's sort of the intro that I want to give. Thanks, Renier.
Thanks, Jason. I think a key point from what you said there was using your time. I actually didn't manage to finish with section 2, and that was because I spent time on that little Ludo hitch between. I think, Diarmuid, you also hit that issue where you were not sure what turns meant, and because I thought turns started when you after you've thrown your first 6, and that completely blew me, and I was flustered, and I spent too much time on it, and I couldn't finish with Where's Wally. So it's important that when you get to, let's say you have 5 minutes left, try and get some points, right? We've seen guys do manual points and get one question right, and you just edge out the player above you, or you just get the points first, just before the other person, and you actually edge out above them. So it's important in the next stages, especially to make sure that you get those points and spend the time. I mean, if you have the 30 minutes or whatever the time is going to be, rather use the 30 minutes, because in this first section you would have only gotten extra points if you got a 90% or higher score. So you might as well just try and do everything and finish everything and finish confidently. So yeah, let's get into the questions. Jason, you alluded to the full question set. The full question set was here. So we had dominoes, lumberjack, biathlon, bowling, Where's Wally, rock paper scissors, bingo, a card game, minesweeper, and Ludo. And the sections that we had to do was biathlon, Where's Wally, rock paper scissors, bingo, and Ludo. The other ones were Asia Pacific questions. So we are going to be covering those questions as far as we can, if time permits, and we'll maybe talk about the others if we have some time. But what's most interesting, I met with a friend of mine earlier, and he was astounded to see dominoes and cards in Excel. He was like, "I'm going to watch this live stream just because there's weird things that I've never seen before," and it's such an interesting competition, and that's why I love it so much. So let me get into biathlon and let's just talk about it. The idea is that we'll each take a case or two and just talk through it. But quickly, just the sort of synopsis of this specific section for biathlon. You have a player that's skiing and shooting. So there's 10 shots. There's 2 rounds. You shoot 5, and you shoot another 5. If you miss, it will be indicated by a black dot. If you get a point, or if you don't miss, it'll be a white dot. And then if you miss, you need to do a penalty loop, and your penalty loop time is essentially given here. The most difficult part of this question is the conversion from kilometers per hour to meters per second, because you need to do a 150-meter penalty loop. If you miss a shot, so per shot missed, you have to do that loop, and otherwise a shot just takes 10 seconds. So if you hit all your targets, you will actually take 100 seconds, because it's 10 times 10. So how I approach this is very similar to how I would have approached this, but sometimes I sort of struggle with, under pressure, when do I jump into a data table and an extra sheet, and when do I not? Because building a data table is nice because you can keep it clean, you can do multiple steps, you can have helper columns, and you solve it for one, and you just do a data table. The data table takes you 5 seconds or 10 seconds. You've got all your answers, but you've actually spent 5 or 10 minutes in setting up the data table, and that is the cost of a data table. So in some of these, I use the data table where I shouldn't have, and a lot of Excel users would be like, what a data table? So hopefully one of you two will get into a data table, at least in yours. But because this is actually the simplest, it was ranked medium, but it was actually one of the simplest ones for me. How I did it, or how I would have done it, is I would have split them up between sections, because you have two different times on your penalty loops for the two sections. I would just basically go and count the number of misses. And there's multiple ways that you did this. I know that Dim, you did a 5 minus the sum of, because 1 is for a shot, and then 0 is for a missed shot, right? So
Renier, let me just jump in over here very quickly. So these are that's a very good functionality that's called icon sets, and these are basically ones and zeros created into these little dots through the icon sets functionality. So I'm not going to expand on that. You can just conditional formatting, icon sets, perfect to improve the visualization of your Excel files. And the same with these green ticks and red crosses if you get answers incorrectly. That's over here.
I'll just add one thing to that, which is so you'll see it here, but you'll see it in many of the other problems we're looking at today as well. Like the esports problems tend to be like very sort of beautifully formatted, but in a way that's not always optimized for data accessibility. So like, for example, just being able to look at this and say, okay, I see, white and black dots, but is that like different Unicode characters, or is that, in this case, conditional formatting? How do I convert a dice into a number? How do I convert a fist emoticon into something I can work with? That's actually one of the biggest challenges in this format, and something I'm sure we'll talk about as we go through them.
Definitely. Yeah. I think for a normal Excel user that's never seen these types of characters before, it can be daunting, because if you just look into it, and I think the dominoes is a good example of that, because the dominoes, like how it's structured, it's actually a 2-character icon, and if you know that, and if you can figure that out, it's much easier to work with it. Sorry, Andrew, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, I just want to say that we're trying to make the cases, let's say, spectator friendly, not that much player friendly over here. Yeah,
that's good.
He admits it.
So if you saw what I did there, I would have just done a count F of the zeros, just to count the misses, and I just copied the formula across, and then just went F2 and dragged the sort of range across and pressed enter. And then I saw, Dim, what you do is you solve the whole row or the whole question, and then you copy it down. But what I typically like to do is I just try and verify each part of my answer. And maybe that's why I take double the time that you take. But I usually just do a sense check, just to say 3, 2. I can see there's 3 black dots, 2 there. It looks like it's rendering the right results. I can continue with the rest, so that it feels like I've closed off one piece at least. Next up, we want to do the penalty loops, right? So the penalty loops, firstly, we want to convert this into meters per second, because that's what the question told us to, because we want to determine how many seconds will each sportsman take or spend. And we know that one shot is 10 seconds, and we've got 150 meters, but we've got kilometers per hour. And that's the most difficult part of this question. So if you figure that out quickly, you can move on to the next section. So how I did it was I just said, well, 21.4, and I wanted, so now this is kilometers per hour. So to get this into meters per hour, I would just need to multiply that by 1,000, because there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. And to get this into meters per second, I would need to divide by, because I've got hours, I would need to take this and divide it by 60 to get it into minutes, and 60 again to get it into seconds. Or you could have done a 3,600, so 60 times 60 if you wanted to. But essentially, the penalty loops would be 150 meters divided by the kilometers per hour, and then we divide that by 60, divided by 60 again, or by 3,600, and multiply that by 1000, and you've got your answer. And you can check it to your answer. You have to round this. Interesting fact, though, I actually, when I looked at this again, if you round too early, your first question is wrong. If you round too early, your total score would be wrong. You need to round on the total or the final total. So I'll just pull this across and again just fix my formula over here.
Yeah,
but
you're right, Renier. And also wanted to add that, but you have to round here. And we've seen players who were not rounding the answers, and basically they were getting correct answers for questions number 41, 42, and 43. But the total for the level was not correct due to the fact that it was off by, I think, by 1 or by 2.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the it was quite clear in the instructions, and we did not count these results.
Yeah.
So.
One thing I also wanted to just talk about is the use of if error, because in this case, a lot of people would have used if error, but if error is not a good modeling technique, because you might actually miss an error that you think is a divide. So in this case, it's divide by 0 because I'm dividing by 0 there. But if I didn't drag my formula across, I might have been using this column. And I think I'm using the right column because I've built in an if error, but I'm not. And that's why it's much better to use the technique like you used in your live video as well, Dim, where we basically just want to check if this number is equal to 0, then it's just a 0, else we do our formula. I think that's a much better approach. And that way, if I test it, well, now I just need to copy that formula across to the other side as well. But if I test this backwards, I just need to move my cell back there, copy my formulas down, and I basically have values for everything. And now I can get to my total time. And for total time, the way that I would have done it was to say, well, we've got 10 shots. Multiply that by 10 seconds, or you could have done 100. And then in this case, I want to take the number of misses times the time taken per lap. And because of that, I can just use a sum product. And a lot of people would not necessarily have used the sum product, but a sum product would do the multiplication and the addition for you automatically. And copy that down and do a round on the total. So I would just go like that and go and round all of them at once. Select my range down, round to 0 digits. And we have our answer. And I believe that is the same answer as in the example. I don't know if there's anything that you guys want to add. Otherwise, we jump to the next question.
In the answer file, you actually get all these automatic scoring set up. So basically, as soon as you get the answer and it's correct, then you get this green circle next to that. So, but that's only on the answer tab, of course.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a nice addition.
We've got an intimidating audience member here. I saw Bo has posted the one-line formula that he used to solve this when he was doing the speed run against Lawrence. Yeah, very always very compact. Nice. Bo never needs help herself.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Another thing I just wanted to expand. So the like people might be a little bit have some questions like why are the levels in the answer file mixed up, because they do not follow the sequence that we've had for both sessions, so they are kind of mixed up. And the reason for that was that well, initially it was like one 10 section case prepared for the qualification round, and then at one point I just understood that basically it's it's not going to be fair if we give the same case for both the sessions, because there is a risk that well, a small risk, but still that the cases could be published somewhere. So we'll just split that into two parts. And I was just trying to put the numbers or to put the levels in in balance, and that's why. So basically, this is the original way it was supposed to give you some joy for 2 hours, but I think that 1 hour was quite good for for entertainment, and all the players, they still got all the cases, including the ones that will be there in the finals. So this is included in the package.
Yeah, that's great. The other thing, just to talk about the easy versus medium versus very hard, I would have actually preferred, me personally would have preferred not being able to see how hard or easy these questions are, because I know that I would have been able to solve the Where's Wally, but like I said, I spent time on Ludo, which was supposed to be easy, where biathlon was actually easier for me than Ludo, for instance. So sometimes it actually makes sense to do it like Dim and just go with it, because you get a lot more points for the harder levels. And if you're working against time, so we've got an hour for this one, but when you've only got a half an hour, sometimes it helps if you could actually solve the more difficult sections in one go as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are just subjective views that's like we've shared between the the people in the team who were testing the case, and like we wanted to give some sort of some hints which ones are more or less difficult. So probably the bet like biathlon could be great in terms of, let's say, points per minute, because if you said that it was easier for you, then probably you could, like, we gave more points there, but you were capable to do that. We were thinking of that some players might have problems with converting from kilometers to meters, to meters per second. And by the way, Dim, like for American players, like every time we're putting some some units, there was a big trade-off. Do we put like kilometers per hour or miles per hour? How tough was that for Americans, in your opinion, to understand these units?
I mean, I'm a fake American from that perspective. I've grew up in Europe and then moved here, so I'm quite used to switching. If you had given the speeds in miles per hour and asked for how many seconds to go, a number of meters, I would be like, fine, this seems reasonable.
Well, okay. All right. So let's move on, guys. I think we've got the answers for the first one.
Yeah, so let's maybe, Dim, can you share your screen and show us how you well, you don't have to show us how you attempted it initially, how you would have attempted it now, because I saw this morning on LinkedIn you actually commented on one of the posts and said you would have done it differently now, and I think it's quite genius how you said you would have done it differently. So maybe you can share that with us.
Sure. So I think I'm going to do. Sorry, I need to share screen first. Let's do that. I think you need to enable me to share screen.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna do Where's Wally, and I'm gonna do Ludo. I might just start with Ludo because that's a little easier, and then here we go. Now I've got it. Share screen. All right, can you guys see me?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. All right. So let me start with Ludo, just because that one's, even though it tripped me up and tripped, I think, multiple other people up, it's easier now that I've had a chance to look at it. So Ludo, basically you're given kind of 20 dice rolls in the form of like little dice icons in cells. And so the rules of the game are basically each time you roll the dice, it's a turn. But if you roll a 6, then the next roll is also part of your turn. And you don't start moving until after your first 6. So in other words, here, like in the example, this 1 would be your first turn, this 4 would be your second turn, this 6 and this 5 would be your third turn. And you don't move for any of the first 3 rolls, but you do move 5 spaces on your 4th roll at the end of your 3rd turn. And then this is a turn, this is a turn. I don't think there are any more 6s until after. And so the question is to figure out how many spaces do you move in your first 10 turns. So the mistake I made, because I was kind of speed reading the instructions and trying to hurry on a little too fast for my own good, was that I thought that the turns started counting from when you got your first 6. So I thought these 2 were not turns, but they actually are, which, I mean, it does say here. It says, for example, it took you 3 turns to start moving, as I realized when I went back and looked at it. So yeah, I mean, part of it is just, I don't even know tactically what the best approach is. Like, often I make mistakes because I read the question too quickly, but then often I scan the question, have a pretty good sense of what's going on, and can answer the question without spending any more time reading it. So I think you can, there's no perfect answer. Sometimes you really need to read every detail, and sometimes you look, you have a sense like, oh, I kind of know how a word search works or how Ludo works or whatever, and then you just move on. So this is a good example of what I mentioned earlier about, this looks really cool because you've got like dice in Excel, not kind of how you'd expect it, but can be tricky to work with. So most common approach here is probably just to copy, find, and replace all the 1 dice with a 1 and replace all the 2 dice with a 2 and so on. If, for something like rock, paper, scissors, where you've just got 3 icons, or this where you've just got 6 icons, that is pretty easy to do. A couple of alternatives. One is if I just paste transpose that and can't remove duplicates when the range has an outline. I never knew that. Okay, I'm going to put this on a new tab. Oops, sorry, copy. And then remove duplicates and sort. So now I've got my dice, because they do sort correctly. I've got my 1 to 6 there. So then I can convert them to numbers by saying equals match this against this 0, or I could just use X match and then I wouldn't have to do the 0, and copy that across. Or the sort of galaxy brain option. This is a trick that I learned from Bo, who's watching live in the chat. Thank you, Bo. Is that each of these, I was used to using char and code to convert between like ASCII character numbers and characters. These are not ASCII characters, but they are Unicode characters. So if you take Unicode of this, it'll give you this number 9856. And if you check, all these 6 are sequential Unicode characters. So if you take Unicode of that minus 9855, that will also give you the number there. And if you want to, really show off or do a speed run Bo style, then you can just do one formula to convert the entire thing like that. And then you've got nice, easy numbers to work with. I'm realizing my computer is running a little slow because I don't know if we'll get around to using it, but I've got another version open here. It is not this one, and I don't want this one. Yeah. So I might come back to that later if we have time, but I'll leave that for now. So anyway, so you've got the numbers. I'm just going to leave that error row there, or I guess I could if error it. Or if error, make it look a little prettier. But anyway, so once you've got your numbers, so you can then, one option is you can just have a kind of round count that starts here. So you can say if the previous row, so I'm referring to the kind of, I'm in column 1 of this range, so I'm referring to column 0 of this range. If the previous roll is 6, then it's the same turn as before, otherwise it's the turn before plus 1, and you can carry that across. And it's, for these, I find it's quite helpful to just take this header and copy it over here. Oops, sorry, misplaced it. Copy it over here and copy it over here. I've got your smiling faces covering up that part of my screen. I'm going to move you guys to the bottom. Oh, and I've gone too far, but anyway. So you can see there's 2 6s here, so you end up with 18 turns, and you can do the same thing, copy it down. And then, so the way I did this on the day was I then did like an X match to find where does the first 6 occur, and look that up to figure out what turn that was on. So in this case, it's on the first 6 occurs on turn 3. And then you can do a sum ifs to sum the dice moves where your turn number is at least the turn where your first 6 came up and no more than 10. And then you can, then you just have to subtract off 6 because that includes the 6 from that first turn. Slightly jazzier method that I came up with later, which I'll show you quickly now, and that is we're just going to do a count. I'm going to say let 6s before. So I mean, you could do this in a separate block of cells, but I don't need it that way. So I'm just going to do it as a let. I'm just going to figure out how many 6s have I rolled before getting to this turn. And so how am I going to do that? I'm going to count from here. I'm going to lock that first column. Oops, lock that first column, but not the last one, so that it will expand to take in more of the range as I go across. Count ifs that 6. And then I can say if 6s before is greater than 0, then it's just going to be the roll number minus the number of 6s you've already rolled before. Otherwise, you just blank it out. And then I copy that across. And so this does two things. One is it kind of correctly figures out my turn numbers. So over here, for example, in 15, I roll a 6. So, you know, now my count of 6s before goes up by 1. The turn goes up by 1. Sorry, the roll goes up by 1, and so the turn does not go up. But the other thing is it also nicely blanks out everything before. So I mentioned before that I had to do a sum ifs with 2 conditions. First, I had to figure out the first round to count from, and then I had to say, you know, at least that, but no more than 10. On this one, you can just say equals sum ifs, sum of the dice, where this is less than or equal to 10. And hopefully, if I copy this down, that'll work for the rest as well.
Yeah, so interesting. The count if is similar to what I did. I didn't do the let, but I did do the count if on the locked column, and then copy that across to count the number of 6s, and yeah, basically use the same sort of logic. But it's great.
Yeah, so you had that like as a separate kind of another one of these blocks.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
And what's interesting is with this, I would have actually gone the data table route because I need to go multiple columns across, and I've got too much going on the same sheet. I like just doing stuff. I like transposing it, and I would actually do similar to what you do in a lot of your videos, where I would put the example or the turn number in the top, and I would prepare it for a data table. I would transpose the dice rolls to go down, and then just do every single calculation in helper columns, so that it's a much simpler look and feel, and it's much easier to error handle and to quickly change things. It feels very busy for me once a sheet looks like this. But yeah,
yes.
what you're basically
so
doing right now.
Let me just kind of do a quick example here. I think that will do it. So this is basically what Renier was just describing, is if you do a lookup on the game number, which can be example 5 or any of these from 81 to 100, and return these columns here, which you can do with index match, or you can just do one X lookup returning multiple columns, and then transpose that. You've got it running down columns, and then you can do all the rest. You can do your Unicode of that -9855, and then you can kind of do all your workings across in kind of neat columns like you're used to, and then you just eventually get to some answer here, and you lay out whatever sequence 20 from 81, and you do a data table to say, you know, what would this value become if this becomes 81, 82, 83, 84, and so on all the way along. I mean, as you've gathered from my videos, I'm a fan of data tables, although in this format it's a sort of less obvious investment proposition, because there is, like you mentioned earlier, there's a time to set them up. I think in the ones where you've got like 5 levels that build on each other and the input data is very similar for each one, I think the case for a data table is stronger, especially because by the time you get to level 5, there's often like very complicated, advanced, convoluted, weird, bizarre logic going on. And so, you know, having that extra space to work in definitely helps. I think as a sort of style point, I've definitely started leaning away from data tables a little bit more. I credit watching Bo Excel Wizard's amazing videos where he does everything with no helper cells and has almost never used a data table. He's sort of inspired me to see that there's more that you can do without going on to a different sheet. But I still do that sometimes.
A quick note of caution here, actually, Jim, that what I noticed is that Bo is just perfect when it's a rehearsed case and when it's something where you can prepare and you can really, set up everything and you know what you're doing. at the time when you're under pressure with 30 minutes to solve the case in the next rounds, I think like having helper cells helps you to structure your own thinking process. So I wouldn't try to put everything into one cell.
Yes, I mean, as you can see, I can see that it would be possible with time and reflection and clever strategy to kind of solve this in one cell. I don't think it would be the fastest way, at least for me. Although I would recommend have a look at some of Bo's videos where he was prepping for this event, because he did a few not speed run, not rehearsed, and I actually found it super interesting to see the way that he worked through building some of those really, really complicated formulas. But yeah, so that's Ludo. That's the one that kind of tripped me up most. I guess I'll zip straight on and do Wally. Let me see, where is Wally? No, that's the one before.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, we need to zip through this one. But I think what's most important is to talk about your new strategy, Diarmuid, because I think that's a great strategy. When I saw that comment this morning.
I'll wave my hands at it. I definitely won't be able to write that in a reasonable length of time. But so let me just kind of quickly explain. So the idea of Where's Wally is you've got a word search grid. It's 1,000 characters long, 20 characters wide, and you need to find these various words in it. So here's the example. Wally starts there. The words can run either vertically down, vertically up, horizontally to either the left or right. And in whichever direction they're running in, the question is to figure out the row in which the word starts. So in other words, here, Wally starts in row 1. But if it was, if it was backwards, so the W down here and the Y up there, then you'd be looking for row 5. So that you're always just looking for the row containing the first letter. So I won't try to build this now, because otherwise it'll take too long, but I'll just kind of briefly describe first what I did kind of on the day, and then what I did, what I definitely would not have done on the day, but did come up with afterwards. So what I did on the day was basically, concat each column and each row into one, enormous string. So here's a string that's Wally, and same for each of the other columns. And then you can also you can reverse it. Lots of different ways to do this. The way I did it was index on here, and I want a sequence of 1,000 numbers starting from 1,000 in steps of -1. I missed a closing bracket there, but anyway, and that way you sort of concat the sequence backward as well to handle your reversed words. So you can see here it starts with W-A-L-L-Y and so on. And then basically I used Xmatch to figure out where a word occurred in here. So Xmatch, let's just say I'm looking for anything containing Wally. So I'm going to search star Wally star in here. Match mode is is not exact match, is wildcard character match, and that tells you it occurs in the first one. Little thing that I learned, because I didn't have Xmatch when I first did Where's Wally, because I was one of the contestants who did it live way back in the day. If you use match on this, it cannot handle it with wildcards. It can't handle 1,000 character string, so you have to use Xmatch. Otherwise, you got to find a different way to do it. But anyway, so once you've figured out which column it occurs in, then you can say search for Wally in in index here. So in other words, take it's in the first column, so take the first column from there and then search for Wally in that, and it tells you it's in the first position. And then you have to do some adjustments for when you're working backwards. You have to do like 1,001 minus and that kind of thing, but you don't need to worry much about that. So that's the gist of how I did it. And I basically kind of laid out 4 columns here that were like, where is it if it's, vertically up? Where is it if it's vertically down? Horizontal to the right, horizontal to the left. And then I just did a kind of chain of if errors to say, if this one doesn't work, try this one. If this one doesn't work, and so on.
Dim, would this approach work if you also were able to put the letters diagonally, or the words?
Not exactly. You'd need to come up with some different with some different combinations. I mean, so basically it would, in that you could still come up with a series of strings like this, except that you'd probably need to do something like this with some, sequences running, counting up this and that way to be able to concatenate them. I mean, the good thing about the diagonal is, you can never go diagonally more than 20, so you don't have these kind of enormous strings. So, I mean, let me just very quickly, you could do something like concat index here, sequence 20, sequence 20. Is that right? I think that's right. And that gives you WARGY. Yeah. So you could do it something like that. I mean, it gets more and more fiddly as you try to figure out, like, okay, so, if I match in the 5th place in that means I'm in what row, and that can, but in principle, you can do it. Yes.
Good. Yeah.
What I just wanted to add about your comment from this morning was, instead of taking these long strings and actually reversing them, you could have just reversed the words themselves and tested that against the strings, so that you don't have to take these long strings and have multiple long strings calculating on your sheet. So it's just good Excel practice to sometimes take the shorter thing that you're trying to match, which would be the words, and reversing them with a sequence.
Yep, exactly. So let me just spend 1 minute, if I can, on the sort of Galaxy Brain version of this. I don't know how many people have seen this, because it was kind of only on an Excel Lambda group, but a guy called Eric Ohm, I'm not sure exactly how he pronounces his name, came up with a Lambda that can solve this whole case with no helper cells, which is truly wild. I'm just going to very, very quickly show you the gist of that, or the gist of my slightly varied version of it. So basically what the idea is, think about, rather than the whole grid, just think about one cell. If you wanted to figure out, does the word Wally start in this cell and go either up, down, left, or right? Well, one thing you could do is you could say offset from here, sequence, whatever, let's say you're going 5 rows starting at 0. Don't ask me why, but I need to put a T around it. Too few arguments. Sorry, I need no columns. And so that'll give me, UJETU, but if I then change the sign on that, it'll give me the letters as they read up from here, UDEHG. And so if you concap that, that'll give you, the word going up, the word going down, the word going left, and the word going right. And so you can basically say, for any one cell, is this, is the word of length, 5 or whatever your input length is, starting from here, going up, down, left, or right, equal to that. And then let me just, oops, sorry, not print, open. I think this is the one. Yeah, so this is the, here's one I made earlier. So I wrote that formula as a Lambda, here, words from origin. So it's basically kind of putting all that together. So, here's the word going up, check if it's, starting from that cell sequence. Same thing for the word going down, word going left, word going right. And it just returns true if, the input word starts somewhere in that given cell. And then you can do something like this with a by row and a by col. So I won't kind of labor the point too much, but the idea here is basically you're saying, take the search area and apply a function to each row that returns true if the word starts somewhere in that row. And if that is true, then give me the row number. And then the function that you apply to each row that does that is this this by col, which says, for each, so you're reading across one row, for each column in that row, use this words from origin function to see if the word starts there, and then wrap it, that returns true or false. So you get a column of trues or falses. You wrap an or around that to figure out, does it start anywhere in that row? And that function with no helper cells will return all the correct answers. I wouldn't dare to write a function like this in the competition. No. Because you'd go down a debugging rabbit hole first time. But I thought that was pretty cool, so I thought I'd show you that.
Yeah, Excel. Once you start with these kinds of things, Excel has become more and more a programming language in itself. And I told someone the other day, I've been moving away from VBA for everything. These days, it's Power Query or stock standard Excel solves most issues or solves most problems for me. Another thing that I thought of is using a conjunction between wrapped rows and wrapped cols in this example, and actually building one big array and running through the array like that. But you could just use the array as it has been as it's given there. I think in the interest of time, I don't know, Jason. Jason said he's struggling a bit with load shedding, which is a very South African thing, where they literally switch off your power when you're doing live Excel sessions. So, Jason, is your connection stable? You're muted. Just want to check. Because it was looking like Jason was struggling with a bit of a connection issue on his side, because when the power goes off in your area, with it goes the fiber sometimes, and with it goes the normal cellular connections as well. So
no.
Jason, are you there? All right.
Should you and I kind of
we can
dive on?
We can maybe just talk through it. I think we're running out of time. So maybe let's talk about the rock paper scissors example, and not do it necessarily, but just talk about good strategies around it. Because what I liked from your strategy was, I'm just going to share my screen. And Jason, if you can hear us and you want to interject at any time, please feel free. Just want to share my screen again. So the rock paper scissors example was actually pretty awesome. I liked it from the very beginning. How I did it was very similar to how you did it, Dim, but I didn't do it with the wrap rows function, which I really liked in your example, where you can literally use wrap rows, and because it's a row, I can pass the whole vector into the formula. And tell it I want to wrap it by sets of 2, because we've got 2 players playing against each other, and I don't need to pad it with anything. And then I essentially have everything running down. I could do wrap calls as well if I wanted to handle it in a different way. And then you can go and actually go and how I did it was I just concatenated all of them like that, and I built a little lookup table. And with the lookup table, I basically said, well, in this case, this is a loss, so that's a 0. This is a win because rock beats scissors. So I just built a little lookup table with all the unique connections. We've got the unique combinations. We've got 9 combinations, and then you just concatenate it in that way, and do a match back or an X lookup back to your lookup table, and you do a sum.
It's funny. I did the same. Like 9-row table, like all the possible combinations. I realized afterwards that actually you could probably do something even simpler than that, which is, for any throw the first player does, there's only one throw the other player can do that they will beat. So you could actually do a lookup table with just 3 rows, which says, look up rock and return scissors, because that's what that beats. Look up scissors and return paper, and paper and return rock. And then you could, rather than looking up the combination, you could just look up the first one, return what needs to be the second one for it to be a win, and then compare them. And if they match, then you get a point. And if they don't match, you don't get a point. I realized I like, as I was laying out the table, I was like, I marked okay, so these first 3 are wins. And then it kind of occurred to me, actually, then everything else automatically has to be a lose. So yeah, I guess I've overcomplicated this, but yeah, that's just a little alternate.
Yeah, and I think that's it's easy to do to overcomplicate something once you're under a pressure situation like that. So yeah, like you said, or you could have just built your lookup table to have three combinations, because it's only for the wins that you need to account. So I don't think we necessarily need to spend much more time on that. These are just basically emoticons in there, and you could replace them with anything, or you can use them in VLOOKUPs or XLOOKUPs or index match. So just for the player's sake, it's easy once you structure your information to use that in a lookup table. And a lookup table is pretty much, in most cases, the most easy or the easiest way to attempt something like this. Dim, you want to quickly take us through the last one?
Sure.
Jason, how does your connection look? Are you still struggling with your load shedding? Right. Just want to see. So the next one would be the bingo. I think that's the last one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Let me pull it
always,
up.
Always click on the wrong. Always click on the wrong icon when I open up groupings.
All right, here we go. So just one other kind of quick note on the rock paper scissors, a sort of health warning, channeling the spirit of Oz Slay being your uncle who warns you to be careful with the shiny new things. Like this is a great example of where, like as Renier's solution did, you don't have to replace the symbols. You can just work with them because they work fine as symbols. But just one thing to watch out for is the length of the rock or fist symbol is 2, not 1. And so, at some point when I was doing this, I maybe live or maybe when I was trying it after, I built a solution for like a multiplayer version of this where you got a unique list of all the different things that were thrown and then took, left of that 1. And it turned out that was not always, taking the leftmost symbol doesn't always give you one of these symbols because left of this breaks. So that's just a thing to watch out for.
Same with dominoes, right? Because dominoes, I think, is also a length of 2 for each of the characters. So
yes, I had the problem with that as well. I tried to break it up using text, like using mid,
text to
and
columns.
got it all wrong.
Oh,
should have just done text to columns.
If you use a mid sequence, then you need to account for the fact that it's two characters, and on competition day, it can actually blow you out of the water if you're not prepared for something like that. If you can't keep your
I mean, it's the format. The format can be unforgiving if something goes wrong. that's definitely true. All right, so let me just very quickly show a couple of things on bingo. So bingo, what you're given is the numbers, whatever 1 to 75, get called out in some order. You have a bingo card, and so as each number gets called out, you fill it in, and you got to get this pattern. So in other words, you've got to get sort of all the numbers on here that correspond to green on here. So a couple of ways to approach this. One, which I've actually already done here, you were just given this as colors. Again, that's a kind of fairly standard thing to have to deal with on one of these problems, is like information might be provided in the form of colors or conditional formatting or whatever. You got to convert that into something you can work with. So in this case, I think I just did it by kind of filling in all ones and then deleting that. But another option is if you first delete the orders, then that way all these green cells are formatted the same. Then what you can do is find by format, choose format from cell, that cell, and then replace with 1. And then I'm just going to select this range and hit replace all. And that, so like if you have, if you had 10 of these patterns, I think we had like 5 of these patterns in the original version of this bingo game, then you can kind of quickly do multiple of them. The other thing, which didn't occur to me at the time but occurred to me later, is that you could also just come in here and delete the handful of numbers that don't apply.
That's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did, because on competition day, just find the simplest way to do it. I mean, absolutely, your find and replace is quick, but maybe just clicking on the numbers and deleting them is the quickest. And what I did was I found the numbers, or I quickly selected them, deleted them, and did the to call, and I put all of them in one column, and I had an array that I can match against, and I'm done. So this example took me maybe 5 minutes to solve.
Yep. So I mean, you could split it into a column, or you don't even have to. So I'm just going to lay it out in a kind of in a big way here for a second. I'm just going to say, sorry, I'm going to say if this, then X match this against this, otherwise blank, and that's going to tell you whatever, this 12 here is drawn in the third position and so on. Yeah. And so you need to figure out when are they all drawn. So you're just looking for the max of that. And so you just say, wrap that in a max. And then I can just cut that, bring it down here. I need to lock a couple of things. And anyway, you get the idea. Yeah. So I just need to lock these two references, and then I can copy it down. The other way, totally different way that I didn't notice at the time, but I guess to make sure that it was totally clear, they also wrote out here, in this particular case, these are the numbers that need to be covered. These numbers do not belong to the pattern. So actually, you could completely ignore the bingo card and the pattern and do it this way. So you could say, well, again, let me just lay it out big to start. You could say text split of this and split by either a space or a comma, and that will split this out, and each number is now in a separate thing. And then you can take that and say X match. Yeah. And again, I'll just lock this one so I can copy it down. X match that against, let's start with just here. And then again, many of those give all of those have given errors. Why is that? Oh, sorry, yeah, because you got to multiply by 1 because it's coming out as text. Yeah, so you got to convert it back into a number, and then you can just take, you can wrap that in an if error, and then wrap that whole thing in a max, and that'll do the same thing again, and you get back to that 73. No, so that's another. Like I said, it's what I love about this whole format is there are just like so many different ways that you can tackle these things. So yeah, that's one way where you don't even have to touch that just for fun.
And Tim, another advantage for the format actually is that even a person who is not even close in terms of being advanced in Excel as you could have just put together these numbers with a mouse, just drag them in a line of sequence, lose maybe even
absolutely
less time than you're writing the formulas.
Delimited,
do the same max,
comma, space, finish. Yeah. Well, there's already some data anyway. You get the idea. But yes, lots of different ways to do it. That's the fun of this.
Yeah, and also the best approach there is, or the best idea of the format is that it's still like there are a lot of strong players, but there is a lot of luck. And on the competition day, it's stress and it's the right chances that a weaker player beats a stronger player. And well, you've seen it last year yourself, right? So basically, there were no not all the 8 top seeds made it to the finals, right? To the quarterfinals.
Yep. So, no, I got knocked out in the 3rd round last year. Luckily Joseph is seeded, so I don't have to meet him until later this time. But yeah, I mean, the simple truth of it is that you misread one thing, you get an idea stuck in your head, you can go off down the wrong track and spend most of your half hour trying to debug, and it just anyone can blow it, and anyone can nail it on the day. Yeah. There's definitely an element of luck.
Yeah, and of the run between formula.
That's actually always one of the interesting tactical questions is, if you're getting low on time, do you debug? Do you try and manually do one of the next level? Do you just pull out a run between or what? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I thought we would have some time for questions, but it doesn't seem like we have many questions. So I think we can just sort of call it a day because we've run out of time. We've enjoyed this so much that we actually spent more than an hour already on the call. But I just want to thank you, Andrew, Tim, Jason, for joining me today. Like I said, I think we'll have more of these sessions definitely, because it's just fun to add the human element to it and talk about the strategies, and it's nice to actually learn from each other and see how different people would have approached the same problem, and how you actually approach it live is what's most interesting in my mind. So yeah, I'd just like to thank you, and hopefully we can all join another call soon after the next round, and we can chat some more about the interesting problems that Andrew and his team came up with.
Alrighty, thanks for having me, Renier. It's been fun.
Thank you, Renier. Great,
Appreciate your time.
great overview. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.